all items may be taken out of sequence to accommodate public and staff availability. So at this time, the meeting is called to order, and Commissioner Wilson, would you please lead us in the pledge? Thank you, Commissioner Wilson. At this time, just at 4 o'clock, we'll open up to public comments. Any member of the public may address the Solid Waste Management Authority on any matter on or off the agenda. After receiving recognition from the chair, please give your name and your city or county address. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Are there any public comments at this time? And thank you for turning on the lights. I thought it was me. No public comments? Seeing that, we will then close public comment session, and we'll move on to the item number 1, Del Norte Solid Waste Task Force, discussion regarding meeting of November 10th, 2014.
The meeting of November 10th was canceled for lack of quorum, and the task force is trying to reschedule that meeting for next Monday.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ward. We're good on that. We'll now move to the consent agenda. And the items listed are approved minutes, regular session, response to the October 2nd, 2014 letter to the editor from Don MacArthur as submitted to the Del Norte triplicate and published November 5th. Approved budget transfer in the amount of $2,090.
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. We'll open it up to public comments. Does anyone from the public wish to have any of the items discussed here? At this time, public comment. I'll bring it back to the board if there are no other comments. And I would like to pull 2.3 from the agenda for public edification. A budget transfer in the amount of $2,090. Ted, would you give us a synopsis, please?
Vehicle insurance essentially was short in the line because we paid an additional $600 at the beginning of July for an additional insured person who was a temporary part-time person, Erica Semenoff, to cover the gate duties at Gasky and Klamath. And so that was paid out of this year's fiscal budget, and so that put that line over. So that's why we're adjusting that line. And then overtime has already been overspent because we remain short-staffed. We have not yet filled the account clerk position, and Lisa Babcock's doing an excellent job of filling in as the administrative assistant, but her regular job of account clerk is left vacant, so we're a little short-staffed.
All right, thank you very much, Ted. And any board comments with regard to the pulled item, consent agenda item, or any other comments?
Just a point of information, or a point of order, I guess. We already made a motion, a second, to approve the consent. We shouldn't be pulling it if we've already made a motion to go.
All right, well, I would have pulled that prior to that, so I'll take responsibility for that. I think it was important that we have the item pulled for discussion, so that now that it's been done, we'll move on, and we'll call the vote. Karen?
Commissioner Gastineau?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
And Chairman Gitlin?
Yes. Okay, moving on to discussion item number 3, landfill foreclosure. Ted? Anything in there? Post-closure.
There is no item on the landfill post-closure. There is an item on under 4
Okay.
for the collections franchise.
Go ahead.
And this is regarding the authority-directed bin pulls. We have 20 each year. So far, the authority has allocated 17 of those, so we have 3 remaining. If the board does not provide further direction about how to use those, we can still make sure that those aren't unused resources, because of course we do have the Gasky and Klamath transfer stations open through December, and so even were we to still have bins left after the December meeting, we would make sure that those resources were used to the benefit of the authority and the community. But they are set aside for community cleanup efforts, and there are 3 additional bin pulls available for the authority's direction through the end of the year. At the last meeting, one of those was allocated for a cleanup behind Safeway along Elk Creek to be done by the city, but there are still 3 remaining.
Thank you, Ted. I appreciate that. Now, I had to actually put this on the agenda because at this time of year, I'm of the opinion if you lose it, you squander it, you don't have it, and you start anew and fresh with a new 20 in January. So there was one particular individual by the name of Mrs. Christmas, I think her name is. Sorry, I'm not remember her first name. Gordon, I'm sorry, Mrs. Gordon. Christmas Gordon is her name. Chris Gordon. Did she contact our office and set up there, and is she here in the audience now? She is not.
I did receive a phone call and was very clear that it would be very helpful to have some sort of documentation in writing, whether that be faxed but she did not follow up in any phone call or any written communication. I also told her it would be very important for her to be at the meeting today.
And she is not, so we'll move on for that. And at this point, I'll ask Commissioner Holly if the city is in need of any additional units, bins prior to the close of 2014, other than what you've already been allocated.
Other than the allocation for
Yes,
behind
which has
Safeway.
already been approved.
I don't think we're in a position, we do have some cleanup on 400 Front Street that needs to happen, but that's actually a tri-agency property, and we're really not in a position to utilize the bins for that purpose before January, I don't think. So I'd be inclined, if there's an absence of other locations, to just utilize it for the benefit of the authority.
All right, doesn't sound like there's going to be any action taken on this.
Actually, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to, actually, if we can give direction to staff, I'd like the director's idea is have it pour over to, but if we can bring it to the next meeting as a policy adjustment to say, if the bins aren't used up by December, they automatically go to Klamath and Gasky. And that way we're not having 3 or 4 meetings discussing bins again.
Okay, I'll direct that. That sounds good. All right, so we're moving forward at this point. Okay, so we'll move on to transfer station. Item 5.1, Ted.
This is a very important item in that it has been a tradition for the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority for many years to offer a tree recycling program for holiday trees after they're done, to try to make sure that those are utilized in the best way possible. And Hambro WSG, the contracted operator of the Del Norte County Transfer Station, has been very instrumental in that program, in that even before they had the contract for operating the transfer station, they did receive trees for no charge at their Hambro-Kresdek facility, and those trees were used as fuel for their plant. Now, of course, that plant has closed and since burned down, and so that use is not available, but Hambro continues to offer this service at their expense. And there is significant community benefit. Not only does everybody who has a Christmas tree come in and bring those in for tree cycling, but also Recology collects holiday trees when their customers are done and brings them into the transfer station. And that program is also dependent on receiving those for no charge at the transfer station. So staff are recommending that the board adopt Resolution 2014-07. I'd be happy to read it for you if you'd like.
Move to approve.
We have a motion, and we have seeking a second.
I'll second.
And a second. Okay, and let's open it up to anybody in the public wish to have a word at this. Public? Seeing none, we'll move on. Bring it back to the board, and yeah, why don't you read it?
Okay.
Go ahead, Commissioner Holly.
As long as it gets read, I just
Yes.
wanted to thank you. Boy, everybody takes care of me. I like that. I just wanted to thank Recology for what you do for that. And it helps with the safety, the fire safety throughout the community, and I think once it's read, it'll say it better than I could, but thanks again.
Well,
Thanks to Hambros also as well.
yeah, I think
And
that's what.
Hambros, yes.
Yeah,
I'm
I want to
sorry.
make sure
Thank you
that Recology does a great job, but this
Great job, Recology.
particular appreciation resolution is directed to Hambros, and let's read it.
Okay, be happy to. This is Resolution 2014-07 expressing gratitude and appreciation for Hambro WSG's continuing support for Christmas tree recycling in Del Norte County. Whereas the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority remains committed to continuing recovery of Christmas trees for their highest and best use, and whereas Hambro WSG has voluntarily accepted Christmas trees for no charge since before beginning operations of the Del Norte County Transfer Station in March 2005, and whereas since 2005, Hambro WSG has accepted over 81,500 pounds of Christmas trees, representing a community service donation worth at least $1,260. And whereas the authority's collection contractor, Recology Del Norte, has provided Christmas tree collection services for their residential collection customers, and this no-charge service depends on unloading those trees for no charge at the Del Norte County Transfer Station. And whereas Hambro WSG has given the same holiday gift to the households of Del Norte County for many years without appropriate formal acknowledgement. And whereas the closure of Hambro's manufacturing operations has increased Hambro WSG's transport and processing costs associated with this free Christmas tree recycling program for the past few years. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Commissioners of the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority does hereby formally express to Hambro WSG appreciation and gratitude on behalf of Del Norte County and Crescent City self-haulers and Recology Del Norte collection customers for continuing this tree cycling program by accepting holiday trees for no charge.
Thank you very much, and let's take the vote. Carrie?
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Commissioner Gastineau?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
And Chairman Gitlin?
Yes. And Mr. White, would you be so kind as to accept the appreciation? And we'll get this into your, posted on your wall. Ted?
Yes, we do have two versions of this resolution for signature, so that one of them is suitable for framing.
Okay.
And we will deliver it framed.
We'll deliver it to you. Thank you, Mr. White, for, appreciate that.
Merry Christmas to everybody.
Yes, and I say that it'll be a Merry Christmas for everyone. And thank you again, Hambros and Wes White. All right, so we'll move on. 5.2, discussion, possible action regarding management of expired marine flares in Del Norte County. This is a continuing item. I was hoping we would see from the harbor, Mr. Helms here, and he's not here. So he said he might try to be here. He had some information he wanted to share. Did he get that information to you?
Yes, more or less. The information that was shared as part of the meeting has all been included in the packet. You have the hot links to the reports that he shared with the people who attended that meeting. With Mr. Helms, I coordinated these meetings, and we are having a follow-on meeting on Thursday, November 20th, and we will be inviting all of those people who are listed there. Bottom line is that while we recognize this as an ongoing problem, there isn't an obvious solution that other communities are already implementing, and so it's more of a statewide issue and a statewide coastal issue. And so we're broadening this discussion. Apparently, there is a statewide group working on this, but we have not yet contacted exactly who is involved. We have some names, and we'll be following up in the coming weeks. Let's see. The one thing I think that it's worth pointing out, of the people who did attend, there seemed to be widespread agreement that they believe it's very unlikely that very many of these flares are being disposed of in the ocean. They feel like most of the fishermen are aware of the challenges of this, and while they may not be legally disposed, they're not going into the ocean. So there is concern, particularly that a number of these marine flares may be stored in boat shops, and so they'll be stored there, and then that becomes a health and safety risk were there to be a fire in the boat shop. And so we very much hope that we have attendance from local fire marshal, but that has not yet happened.
Hey, let's open it up to the public. Public, if you wish to come up to the microphone and opine and give us your thoughts on how to deal with these expired flares, now is that opportunity. Anybody in the public wish to come up and address? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Commissioners, what's your mindset on bringing this back as an issue or waiting for new information, exigent information with regard to how do we deal with this problem?
If it's the board's pleasure, I'd be happy to continue these meetings, and then once there's some sort of action for the board to engage on, some sort of advocacy, then I'll bring it back to the board for discussion and possible action. And in the meantime, I'll just continue on these meetings, and I'll include them as part of our director's reports. So you're apprised about what's going on, but we're not spending time talking about stuff when there's no action.
All right. Commissioner Sullivan, did you have something?
I agree. Good call, Ted.
Okay, no action on it, we'll bring it back when you have some information. Moving on to General Solid Waste Authority matters, discussion, possible action regarding the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority work plan for fiscal year 14-15. Ted?
This was revised per direction 2 meetings ago, and it's the same form that you saw last meeting. And it was, I was requested to put this on this meeting because I was not able to publish this with the last agenda packet, so it came out just before the meeting. So now you've had more time to review it.
Okay, Commissioners? Anybody wish to?
Well, I think I'd like to take the question marks out. We've already got it titled Priority Discretionary Activities listed. I'm just trying to whittle down this legend because this legend is huge at the beginning, and it's already listed as a priority discretionary activity, which means it as funds and resources become available, we'll address it, but it's not a mandatory activity. So on page 6 of 9, it's listed as priority discretion activity, but we can leave the activities. I like the layout. Just take the question marks out, and the question mark activity, it's already described in the title. It seems redundant.
All right, so you want, it looks like there's 6 question marks on that page. Am I counting this correctly? 6 of them. You want, your suggestion is to remove the question marks, and these are in fact no longer in question, they're statements? I want to understand what your...
Well, we've already titled it. We moved it into
I think
priority
he just wants to
discretionary.
get that category off of the legend that's
Okay.
there.
Yeah, I mean, the legend should only probably be 4 or 5 things on the legend, and we've got like, I think there's 8 or 9 there, which seems...
Do we have board consensus on this?
I mean,
Yeah.
all we're
Okay.
doing is simplifying the work
Okay.
plan, so it's
Let's do that.
easier to follow.
Let's do that. And are there any other, okay, with regards to that, so let's simplify the document, and we'll move forward on that. Are there any public comments on this item? 6.1. Seeing none, we'll close off public comments on this. And is there any other information that this is going to be a continuing discussion in next month's meeting, or we can move on?
This is an ongoing, it's a living document, so it's an expression of the current priorities. For instance, I should probably add on there, if I haven't already, a discussion of marine flares, because that's an ongoing.
Yeah, very appropriate, because that's also a living.
Exactly.
Okay, so we'll add that to that, and then we'll move on to 6.2. Discussion, possible action regarding the content of the final R3 report, including but not limited to developing elements of a strategic plan, such as short, medium, and long-term goals, and possible setting of future meeting dates for such planning. And I'm continuing to place this on our calendar, because without the placing on it on the calendar, we can have no discussion. So as a possibility, we may not have any discussion today, but unless we actually agendize this and put it on this agenda, we can now have a discussion if any of the commissioners wish to bring anything up at this time for discussion. So that was the purpose of my adding this, and we will do this in the December meeting too, in the possibility that there's some information that wishes to be discussed. So commissioners, is there anything that you wish to bring up at this time regarding the final R3 report?
No, other than I did use it in their appendix. They had not, in their final report, they had gone over the director's job description, which was referred to, as well as the work plan. And so I just used it to help with the upcoming 6.3, 6.4, and so I found it valuable.
Okay. Any other commissioners wish to bring into, clearly decisions have to be made, and I can appreciate the fact that there's ongoing dynamics on our board, so we want to give that opportunity perhaps in the new year, 2015. But I will continue to place this on the agenda for December in the event that a commissioner wishes to bring up or discuss or make a motion or have the public make similar comment on this particular item, R3 Report 6.2. Hearing none, then we'll move on, and we'll go to 6.3. And this is information and discussion regarding the meetings and status relating to a request for proposals for the position of interim director for the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority. Ted?
Yes, the committee met and we reviewed the job descriptions the job description that was in the R3 report and reviewed that in light of what I'm currently doing and what would be most useful for a director to be doing. And then some additional tasks with regards to strategic planning and developing a transition plan and hiring a new director were also added. So this attached job description is a status report, essentially, of where the committee is currently at with regards to addressing the tasks assigned them by the authority board. And of course, this would be part of a larger RFP package, and we have not yet started developing the front end of that.
Now, on that commission of the appointees were Commissioner Sullivan and Commissioner Hawley, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? Gentlemen, did you wish to have any input? You can take the lead on that.
Yeah, I'd like to comment a little bit about what we've done so far. We did meet and pretty carefully went over the job description that R3 provided, actually, and started looking at what is reasonably continues to be the manager's position and what we could reasonably expect an interim executive director to do. And some areas, given that he or she would only be here hopefully for a few months, we put oversee certain functions instead of actually doing those functions, because the expectation wouldn't be that they'd be up to speed enough to really make certain decisions in certain areas. But beyond that, I think my biggest interest, and where I want the board to speak up in is it was always my idea that the interim director would shepherd the strategic planning process through and help us with a new job description and the recruitment of a regular executive director. But it's especially with the strategic planning part, I'm beginning to waver a little bit, thinking that that's probably a different skill set maybe than what we're looking for here as the interim director. So I kind of would, and that's going to probably up the cost of getting someone if we expect someone with all those skills. So I kind of would like to know others' opinions on whether or not we'd want to see that happen through this position, or if we want to look at maybe hiring somebody from the outside to do that.
Commissioner Sullivan, did you have something you wish to add?
I'm in concurrence with Commissioner Hawley on that. I do think we started going through this, and I don't even know if it's a full-blown RFP that we need, and that's kind of where we've been back and forth on, is this position really, I can't imagine more than 3 to 6 months of having that person, that role. We really, from my preference anyway, I'm not speaking for Rick or the rest of the board, but I don't want somebody in there that wants the position later on. I want somebody there that's neutral, hopefully comes with no partiality as to where they're coming from. So that's kind of why I'm thinking RFP is way too extensive beyond what we actually need right now. And when we, prior to hiring the actual full-time director.
Yeah, in the staff report, actually, Ted made reference to the fact that we want to meet again with some of the execs, maybe Mr. Palazzo, Mr. Serena, and hopefully Martha, and talk about an abbreviated process for hiring this person once we get there. And that not being an RFP, because really we don't have a lot of deliverables we're expecting in this particular case. What we're asking is someone to go and help with the management of the transfer station itself. We're not asking for reports or anything that we could gauge deliverables on. So really what we're just doing is hiring an interim contract person. The city has recently done something similar with our accountant, our business manager there with the city, and we have had an interim police chief. We're probably hiring another interim police chief on Monday, and it's been a real abbreviated process, and I'm hopeful that we can kind of go that direction, get a job description that everyone agrees with, go out and do advertising, and get some applications, maybe have an interview committee or have at least a screening committee to look at those applications, and then do some interviews and get somebody on board. Because if we have to do an RFP, we're going to put it out another couple of months at least. So that's my thought.
Commissioners Gastineau or Commissioners Wilson, any further comment?
So just for clarification, I also went through there and I did notice that you took out quite a few of the duties where this position used to prepare, different types of reports now too as overseeing. And so I know that it looks like it's being pared down, and there were a few things that were added in that were new. But really, if you're going to do the interim position, don't you think this could be pared down even more? It seems as if this is you're trying to find something for all the duties, updating the duties and responsibilities of the position. It would be separate than putting out for an interim position. So some of those things that I noticed on here, like I said, I noticed that a couple new things, but then I also saw several of the things were taken out, and I was a little concerned on the business development side. I saw there was a lot taken out there. Our mission statement isn't really in there. A lot of little changes, so I just felt that I would hope that maybe if it is interim, that it would be pared down, simplified, and when we put it forward, we should put forward the things that a person must have, and then things that are preferred that you would like to have, just because when they're applying, this is a really extensive list. So I feel that it should be pared down, and it sounds as if that's what you're saying too.
I think we're on the same page as you are on that it's to whittle this down to more basic on what in terms of the position. But also another person that we are going to invite into, it's listed as Joey Young, who's head of HR at the county. And bringing somebody that's got experience at hiring as interim, that's why it's important to have Jay and Jean there as well. And then, of course, Martha for the legal side of it. So we want to make sure that's kind of the thought process, mine anyway.
You know that the first part of this, much of this job description has to do with financial management.
I know.
And so we kept that there on purpose because that seemed to be the greatest concern of the board here. But we can certainly pare down some of that. But the thought was that was one primary responsibility that we wanted this person to undertake, I thought. That's why we left them there. But I don't have any heartburn over getting rid of some of these. In fact, see, the other issue before us that we're going to have to struggle with is how long is it going to take someone to do these things? I don't know if we're looking for a full-time person or not. We haven't really come up with that until we finalize what these tasks are going to be. So, anyway.
Well, Commissioner Gastineau, before I go, would you like to?
Yeah, I mean, basically what we're trying to do is find somebody that'll take some of the load off of Ted so he can do most of his program manager job and get that done. And also to help shepherd in a new director in that hiring process. Sort of somebody that's just on the, doing the helm there for a while. And then hopefully we get RFP for our permanent director coming in who will assess what we're doing, take us through our long-range plans, our mission statements, and where the authority's going in the next 10, 20, 30 years. So that's what we're trying to do, is just get somebody.
Well, I think we're all on the same page. I would concur with everyone here. It sounds like this is interim to me means transitional. Smooth transition from point A to point B. And that would be something that I would consider to be more custodial. In other words, keep the status quo, make sure that the wheels don't come off the bus and the train doesn't come off the track, or whatever it is that we're trying to keep everything in focus. So I think by limiting the authority of the interim, it keeps him focused primarily on financial, which I think is first and foremost. He's not in a position of making decisions that will impact personnel issues, and I think that's something that has to be addressed in a way where we limit his scope to more of an accountant and keeping balanced books and making sure that we have everything running smoothly. So then when we do the RFP, the transition is a smoother one, and one that it promotes a constant. And I think we're all on the same page, is to limit now. Can we at this meeting discuss what is going to be removed from this list now? And
I
don't
don't
know,
think we're all
or-
on the same page.
Okay.
And yes, so I know that we've spoken before about doing the strategic plan and felt that that was something beyond this board, and that you felt that you would like to have that to kind of see as far as implementing this R3 report. So again, someone needs to take a clear look at the recommendations. So the person who's coming in, that's the interim person, is not just status quo going along. They're going to be looking at our mission statement. They're going to be taking a look at the R3 report, and that they will, through this process, they will make recommendations as an outside person and do some of the work for us that as far as looking at it to help us make decisions on what is what duties we are absolutely necessary. And again, R3 says we have too much staff for the amount of duties that are currently being done. And so someone that's coming in will look at that. I mean, is that
Correction, that's not what the R3 report says.
What's that?
That is not what the R3
Okay,
report says.
hold on.
Oh.
Let's not discuss the R3 report right now. Let's stay on the agenda item. I see the interim position, and I think we all do, as interim, and not one which this board ultimately will make a decision on the direction or option or hybrid option it ultimately will choose, but apparently now is not the time we're going to make that option unless someone is prepared to make a motion on one of the four options or a hybrid version, and I'll entertain a second for it. We're not in that position. So what we're looking for is to relieve Mr. Ward of this heavy caseload, and he's balancing two plates, and put him back in his position as program director and get someone to handle financial matters. Now, if I'm oversimplifying that, please tell me at this time so we can get some clarity on what an interim director is going to be for what I would presume to be a maximum of 4 to 6 months. Is there something that we need to add or delete so that we can move forward and not do an RFP on an interim, but just simply get someone in there and let this board hire that person and free you up, Ted, to do your job, and we move on. Now, Commissioner Wilson, excuse me,
Well,
Commissioner
let me
Sullivan,
jump,
yes.
sorry to interrupt. I think the point of bringing this, we don't have anything for the board to vote on today. This is a status update, and our intent and where we wanted to get some kind of direction from the board going forward is if we're on the right path of kind of, whittling it down a little bit and not making it as enormous as what we have here so far, and then bringing in some people that have done this before, that have the background of developing an interim type position, which is Jay and Jean and Joey, and then having Martha there as well. So that's kind of my thought, and I don't know. This is more of an update, though.
That's more what it is, but it's also an interest in finding out what it is that you think we should take out and put in, but it might be too much for us to discuss here at the dais tonight. Why don't, maybe if you could maybe email Ted your thoughts on some of these, or mark it up and send it or something like that, and then we'll know better what your feelings are about modifying this job description.
I'd like to get some consensus, and I'm being very aware everybody has a little bit different take on this, but how we should proceed. So I'm going to come back to you, Commissioner Wilson, and to ask you how you see this position of interim director and what you would like to see, and let us know as an authority so that we can either get on board or delete or add to that position. So please, again, would you explain how you see this interim director, where this person comes from, and what he or she is going to do?
So I see the interim director coming in and taking a look at the current staffing levels and as far as the job duties that are that everyone has within the agency, and to give us their insight on what they see needs to be done, as mandatory, has to be done, and then with the information from this person, then we would clearly be able to use that information to hopefully put together a job description of responsibilities and duties for a person that we hire down the road,
Permanent position.
a permanent position.
Okay, thank you. Hold your thought just for a second. Commissioners Holly and Commissioner Sullivan, you're apparently on the same page. Do you see that vision that Commissioner Wilson, as in this interim position, do you see or do you disagree?
Well, I
It's a multiple choice, by the way.
Yeah, I'll take A. I think this person will be able to, he or she will be at that location and will help us, I hope, to draft a permanent job description. I think that is one I'd like to retain, actually. I said that, and I wanted to get rid of that before, but I'm not sure that that's the case. We need this person to help us in the recruitment effort.
So you see Commissioner Wilson's vision as one which you would embrace?
I don't.
Part of this.
I think it would be a part of the discussion when we go to drafting a permanent job description.
I can only imagine this is an interim position we're trying to fill. What it's going to be when we actually get a permanent one?
I think it'll be easier.
I hope so. Now, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm just trying to move this item. Now, Commissioner Sullivan, do you also embrace what Commissioner Wilson is saying? Did you see that? Okay. So I want to get a consensus on this so we can move on. Commissioner Gastineau. Okay. So we're agreeing that this person should oversee personnel and should be one who has an input and should be familiar with the R3 report. Is that correct, Commissioner Wilson, as you see it? Okay, so we can agree on that. So let's put that as one of the criteria, a criterion for that position. Now, is there another area, and I heard very clearly from you, Commissioner Holly, about financial background? Should someone be, let's say, a CPA who in this position? Would that be helpful?
That would be one route to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to get a consensus on that so that when we put the interim position in there, that's someone who's familiar with the balance sheet, someone who's familiar with how to read profit and loss, and someone who has obviously CPA. And I referred to the private sector of seeking that out, talking to experts in our community who might be of service in that area.
Actually, Mike and I discussed the idea of a CPA. The problem is we don't want to make that a criteria, really, because the cost of this will just keep skyrocketing, I think. In the education experience, we're hoping for a bachelor's degree in public administration, waste management, planning, engineering, business, which would pick up part of that, environmental studies, a related field, and 5 years of responsible professional management or administrative experience in solid waste management or a related field, or the equivalent, or a combination of education and experience. So
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but would this person have a bachelor's degree in finance? Would that be acceptable?
I would think that would be
Okay.
acceptable.
All
We're
right.
going to be screening these applications, so we'll,
I'm just trying to get to the,
Uh-huh.
move this along so that if it's a bookkeeper or if it's a CPA, and I appreciate wanting to keep the cost down, but above and beyond everything else, we want to get someone in there who's qualified. We don't want to put someone in there who's not qualified. So I have no problem in looking at someone who is qualified as a CPA and has those important letters behind his or her name, because then they can actually help. And they have that ability to know the difference between going on or off the track. Now, Commissioner Gastineau, is there something you want to add on this?
I would just think that the most important thing is that if we're looking for an interim director, they would have some knowledge of running something like our Solid Waste Management Authority, and coming in fresh eyes from somewhere else.
All right, so you're saying to me that this person who is an interim should have solid waste background.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Yeah, because, they would be the best to be able to assess what we have from their past experience.
I'm not so sure I would agree with that, but I think it's a valid point. You have managers who come in and manage anything from baseball teams to toy companies and don't have experience in either, but they know the difference between left and right and profit and loss. So without saying we have to have an expert in that particular area, that might be something you want to have someone who is more qualified and custodial in nature of how to, remember, 4 to 6 months. We're not looking for a Harvard MBA.
Okay, well, I think the key thing here, and I think this is Commissioner Hawley's point also, is we do not want to limit ourselves when we do put the poll applicants. If we say you, and no offense, Richie, we say you have to be a CPA, we've just cut a ton of people out of the loop. If we say you must be an expert in this particular field, we're cutting people out of the loop. And I think what we're really looking for is a manager and administrator with a financial background that doesn't necessarily require a CPA license for that. Sure, if we can get somebody qualified in that position that has those attributes, great, but we don't want to set that as the minimum. Otherwise, we've just taken a whole pool of applicants out of who we could potentially put in that.
I think we have a pretty clear picture of what this person, this individual, he or she may be, as we move into this 4 to 6 month interim period. And I would be prepared to move forward on looking for that person. I think we have consensus. Is there? I
Well,
don't
I think
hear
the
any
time frame we're looking
bipolar
at-
regions here.
But I think the time frame we're looking at is to bring it back to the next meeting.
Okay.
Have the board approve whatever our final, our advertised position is, and then we can vote on it, we can get input in the process, and then, so we don't have, this is just an update today and to get some feedback, that's it. So we're
And
not voting on
I
anything.
understand that in this holiday time, it's going to come up to that time, but remember that for Ted, the work goes on, and his load goes on, and we're asking him to do things that need to be done, and they're hard. I understand that. So we're trying to get relief for the acting director while he's doing this, and at the same time, do it in an expeditious manner. So I'm sensitive to that. So apparently this will come back in the December meeting. Let's bring it back in the December meeting. Hopefully we'll have a position, a clarity on position, and then we'll move forward. Is there any other comment from the board on this? Since there'll be no action, we won't open up to the public.
Just so the committee has direction, do you want us to go through then and try and reduce these number of duties? And
simplify it.
And just, do you feel comfortable with what you got?
The feedback I'm getting from the board so far, it is to simplify ultimately, we're going to have to vote on this anyway when it comes back to the next meeting. So there is another bite at the apple in the process, so.
Okay.
And as I see this,
Or-
yeah, go ahead.
Or, you could just, again, mark ones that are, mandatory and some that are preferred. If you would like to just leave that, you certainly can do that too. Just mark the ones that are mandatory, and then, the other ones, they're nice to have if you can get them. But, just make it simpler by just marking those mandatory ones that definitely have to have, or would like to have. That's what I would do.
So come back to us, and you are the subcommittee on this, so your recommendations are greatly appreciated and acknowledged and respected. I think it's just, we want to keep this process streamlined so that we move forward, and during this interim period, ultimately to make a smooth transition to the bigger decision, which is the permanent director. Okay, all right, so we'll see that back in December. Let's move on to 6.4, discussion and possible action. I'm sorry. Oh, okay, if there's public comments, since we did not take action, I didn't think it was necessary, but I can see that there is public comments, so let's come up. My apologies, I thought we were not taking any action, therefore there was no public, but I want to be sensitive to that. Go ahead.
Elizabeth Henry, live in the county. Actually, a couple of questions, because I was getting a little confused about the status of the interim. I was concerned when you were talking about an RFP, because all of the way it was put together, it sounded like another consultant. And I think you'd get a lot of feedback on that from the public. So I like the direction you're going, I think. In the city, what is the status of an interim, like an interim police chief? Is he or she a city employee, or what, may I ask a question of a board member?
Yes, and I think it's a good question, and one in which frankly, it's not any one. It can be a contract employee,
Well,
or it
that's
can
why I
actually be
wondered,
a
yeah.
city employee. In this particular case, Commissioner Holly is let's say, Chief Barry. Is he an employee of the city, or is he a contractor? Contractee?
The city, in those particular cases, we have contracts with those interim employees.
Okay, they weren't city employees before, or?
Well, they're usually retirees, actually.
Oh, I
is
see.
what
And you
we
bring them
usually
back
get.
under a contract.
Yeah.
Okay. Then they're considered independent contractors.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. The other, and this may be a concern that, nothing will happen in this area, but I was concerned to hear that an RFP may be used for a full-time person, permanent person. And this might have just been a comment, I think it was Mr. Gastineau that said. And I guess, again, my concern would be that that position ends up as an independent contractor, and I would not like to see that decision being made, you know, before it really is brought back for discussion to the public and all that, because I think there are a number of us that have concerns about a person, whether they're going to be an independent contractor or an authority employee, because if you read the regulations, especially in California, about what an independent contractor can do, it gets pretty hazy and muddy, and you can really get into a difficult area. So I don't know if this kind of job on a long-term basis would work as an independent contractor. So anyway, those are my comments. Thanks.
Thank you. And Mrs. Henry, just so we're clear on that, you go sit down. I want to answer that. We're looking at an interim position. The ultimate decision, which is the RFP, your statements and your question is most appropriate. But for this position, it's a little less complicated and one which is more, as I said before, more custodial nature. Bill, if you'd like to come up, please. For the record in the video, please state your name and city or county resident.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Bill Lonsdale. I live in Crescent City. Listening to the various comments that the board has made, I get the impression that what you probably are looking for is a transition manager rather than an interim director. I was pleased to hear the qualifications that Commissioner Holly spelled out, which seem to favor somebody with reasonably broad experience. But then I'm concerned about the emphasis on CPA. You know, it seems to me that may be one desirable characteristic, or at least some knowledge of how to manage finances. But if the person is going to address other issues during the 6-month period, in maybe managing a transition to a new mission, a new set of goals, and which reminds me that if that person has their head screwed on straight, the first thing they're going to do is come to you and say, look, you guys need to get your act together. We need to find out what the goals and objectives are so we can structure or make recommendations about a structure for an agency to fulfill those goals. Right now, we don't know where we're going to be 6 months from now. And as the chairman has pointed out, this is a laborious and lengthy process, and you all are beavering away at it. But that seems to be almost a prerequisite to a lot of things that you want this person to do. So I'd recommend that you look for somebody to manage the transition, to pull your thoughts together, and to start gelling all of these ideas that have been floating around for so long. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lonsdale. Very good points and very well appreciated. Makes a lot of sense, if I may say. Any other public comments?
Chair Gitlin, if I may clarify
Okay. Yes.
something. Our interim police chiefs at the city are temporary employees working under contract.
Okay, so it's a combination, it's a hybrid then, as compared to,
They're
and I'm asking questions having to do with health
temporary.
insurance and items like that. Now, a contract, someone you have a contract with, an independent contractor, let's say, we wouldn't provide him necessarily with health benefits and a pension plan and all that.
Right, with an independent contractor,
Mhm.
they're responsible for all of their taxes, all of their benefits, et cetera.
Okay.
With an employee, we are responsible for a certain number of those.
So that's an option that this authority will have to decide whether they want to go to an independent contractor as this transitional manager, or in fact, some kind of a hybrid version, where he's an employee with a benefit package during the time of his employment. Is that what I'm hearing from you, Council
You
Rice?
can have either an employee or an independent contractor. What's going to dictate that is how much control and direction the board has over that individual. In this case, if you're hiring an interim director, I don't really see any way that person could be anything other than an employee. Working as a consultant, usually given a task to do, and how you do that is up to you. And you're also responsible for paying for, you know, all your office supplies, for coming up with your own office location, that kind of thing. So in this case, for an interim director, it sounds to me like we're looking at a temporary employee.
Okay, thank you for your feedback. All right, so is there anything else on this item? Otherwise, we'll move on. And it's actually tangential to this because there's additional discussion and possible action regarding appointing committee to meet with the, am I doing this, saying this right? This is 6.4, right? I'm losing my place here. We're discussing 6.4 for the first time.
Yes.
Because they're two similar items.
Yes.
Okay, and I think originally when we did this, set this agenda, I had a question about merging of these two functions, and apparently they have to. So let me read it, 6.4, and it is a separate function. Discussion and possible action regarding appointing a committee to meet with the acting director to make a determination regarding the duties and duration of his current dual assignment as acting director and program manager. And I errantly put these two together thinking that this would be part of a comprehensive or composite conversation that the subcommittee, Commissioners Holly and Sullivan, would just naturally extend themselves into, and I was wrong to have done that. That's my understanding. That is a separate standalone item. Okay, that having been said, let's go to you, Ted, and get an explanation on this, and then we'll bring it back to the board.
This is a request for an appointment of a committee to meet with myself and legal counsel and somebody from the county personnel department to make a determination in writing as to what duties regarding the solid waste manager and program manager positions will be performed and the duration of this assignment. Under the employee agreement, this was to happen prior to the out-of-class assignment, and since that assignment happened at the end of July, I think it's high time that we have a meeting and follow the agreement.
All right, let me just kind of get my mind clear on this, because we're getting to a point where we're discussing about hiring a new interim transitional manager, and then we want clarification, which we may very well, this may be a moot point. This moving forward, you're just going to move back to your program.
It's not a new moot point to me, sir.
Okay, so let's bring it back to the board and get some feedback on this. Or shall we go to the public input first? Okay, let's open it to the public first, and then we'll bring it back to the board. Public, if you wish to come up and discuss item 6.4, and I'll be happy to read it again if you wish to. Discussion, possible action regarding appointing a committee to meet with the acting director to make a determination regarding the duties and duration of his current dual assignment as acting director and program manager. So public, do you wish to opine on and come to the, and I don't see anybody coming up, so now I'm going to bring it back. Oh, yes, come up. Please identify.
Norma Williams, I'm chapter president of the Delaware County Employees Association, SEIU Local 1021. I know that in our MOU, as well as in the Solid Waste Management Union's MOU, there's a similar section that deals with working out of class. To be honest, that this actually, when an employee is asked to work out of class, you basically follow what is in that part of the MOU. It's supposed to define exactly how long both the employee and the appointing authority is supposed to decide exactly how long that term is supposed to last, exactly what the duties are supposed to be, and if it is at a higher level, exactly what that pay rate is going to be. But most important is exactly how long the duration is. You cannot have someone working out of class open-ended. That's just not legal. And so as a result, from what I understand, this seemed to be an open-ended situation. I think it's only fair at this particular point in time that that this situation be resolved and that you do come to an actual determination of exactly how long this is supposed to take place. And again, also citing that Mr. Ward does have the right to union representation at this time as well, when he does meet with all of you.
Okay, additional comments?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Bill Lonsdale again. There's not a person that I know maybe save one, who doesn't think that Mr. Ward has done a spectacular job in handling what he's been handling for so long. But in looking at the staff report and reflecting just on the logic of the situation, it seems to me that an important step was missed in setting up the situation the way it is, that this conference that's being requested perhaps should have taken place at the beginning of his stint in a dual role. This seems to me to be something that he could have complained about a long time ago and didn't. And now he's not really complaining, he's requesting clarification and some sort of end date for his sleepless nights. And so I would hope that you would entertain that. Thank you.
Additional public comments? Seeing none, we'll close public comments. I'll bring it back to the board. Commissioners?
So is this a recommendation from legal, or who's?
Apparently, this is a recommendation. So this is from the
your
acting director.
recommendation?
This is a request from myself.
Oh, it's a request, okay.
It's also describing the terms of the existing agreement, so it's a request in accordance with the terms of the existing agreement.
I think if it's a contractual obligation, we simply need to move forward.
Yeah.
So,
Although I would appreciate next time that actually the recommendation comes from legal, not from the person involved in the situation, because it seems more of a conflict at that. So, but if it's, I agree with Commissioner Hawley. If it's contractual obligation, let's go forward with it.
Okay. All right, we have consensus. And we'll move forward contractually.
I think,
Okay.
The committee assignment is what's
Okay,
requested.
so you're asking for a two by two committee to meet with you to discuss the contractual obligation? Okay. Now I'm going to defer this to.
I'll make a motion that the chair and the vice chair form the committee with legal counsel to meet with Director, or Acting Director Ward.
Okay, do I have a second to that?
Is Mr. Hawley the vice chair?
Yes.
Second.
oh yeah. Proud of it.
Is that your second?
I got a second.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. So we'll bring it back for a vote. And again, time constraints considering, I presume you want this meeting in an expeditious manner.
As soon as schedules allow.
Okay, I'm looking at a calendar. There are not too many open spaces in, but I'm going to do my best to try to do that. And Commissioner Hawley will have to coordinate.
Try.
And then
There's
let's
not
take-
too many players. so.
Let's take a vote on this, Karen, if you would.
Commissioner Hawley?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson? Yes. Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Commissioner Gastineau?
Yes.
Chairman Gitlin?
Yes. Okay, so we'll move on, and then we'll look at the schedule, and again, as expeditiously as possible, which is holiday time, and I'm going to do what we can to see what we can do to effectuate that. Director and Treasurer's Report 7.1. Ted, Acting Director's Report.
Just a summary of some of the activities that have occurred since the last meeting. We continue to submit information to Smith & Newell regarding the completion of the external audit. Cal Recycle was doing investigations regarding the quantities of paints and stains recycled through the paint care program, so I answered some questions regarding that. I collected stormwater samples from the Delaware County Transfer Station. The constituent of concern monitoring, the more comprehensive water quality monitoring we're required to do out at the landfill, is not yet complete. It needed to be completed in August, but it is not yet complete. Working with the county employees to try to get that done. The delays were not a combination of things, some of them equipment, some of them scheduling. The Pat Renault, a new employee of the County Community Development Department, was looking for some information which I was able to provide him regarding management of construction and demolition debris, and I've already started receiving phone calls about that. Working with the task force to try to complete the Cal Recycle's 5-year review. Had a meeting regarding Ebola preparedness. I did discover, and I feel a little chagrined about this, but the change order that we were directed to negotiate with Clean Harbors was actually already negotiated and approved last year. So I was a little ahead of myself and failed to look at the files and notice that, but I have attached that to our staff report. So we are contracted with Clean Harbors for the next couple of years, collection events. There was a Senate Bill 254 regarding mattress recycling that has been adopted into law, and so I plan on the coming month to send a letter modeled from the County of Santa Clara to mattress retailers explaining their obligations under this new law. And I guess I'll highlight, because this does chime in with some of the discussion. Comments are made by various board members about trying to do the minimal that we're required to do by law. And it's important to realize that recycling laws get passed with virtually every legislative session. And so our recycling responsibilities last year are different than our recycling responsibilities will be next year. And so it's not necessarily a completely static situation. And so part of that is reporting with the 5-year review, and we are working with the task force to do that, and we hope that we get a quorum next month so that we can make progress in that regard.
Mr. Ward, can I interrupt?
Sure.
Was wondering about keeping the time on some of these things. We made a request that we could kind of get an idea how much time some of these things. I just noticed that your time was missing on these.
Yes, it isn't a comprehensive list. I apologize for omitting that information, but like I said, it's not a comprehensive list of all activities, but it does highlight some of the issues, so I make sure that the board is aware of these things happening.
But those things that are on here, if you could put your time on it, we'd appreciate it as a board.
I hear that.
Okay.
I'll try to do that in the future. I have to say that I'm a little concerned with the board's recently adopted mission statement calling for 100% regulatory compliance with law, though this report and prior director's report have clearly demonstrated that current staffing levels do not realistically support this aspect of the adopted mission statement. So I just think that's a really important thing to recognize, that our mission statement and our current staffing are mismatched. Coming in the coming month, we do have constituents of concerned groundwater monitoring, as well as stormwater and surface water quality monitoring at the Crescent City landfill. I have a series of meetings both regarding the personnel committee, the Smith and Newell audit, the marine flares. We'll be sending out the mattress recycling letter. Important to recognize that right now, it looks like the stormwater monitoring and reporting requirements will dramatically increase starting July 2015. And if we had appropriate staffing, staff would be working on trying to remove stormwater monitoring and reporting requirements from the Crescent City landfill. But right now, there is not staff time or capacity available to do so. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, anybody have a comment? If not, I do. First of all, I heard you mention about minimum standards. I heard you mention about reaching minimum standards. I don't think that's necessarily a pejorative term when you say minimum standards. Minimum implies that you're meeting a certain, very possibly high level of threshold. And I'm going to use an example of, I have a car that runs on regular gasoline. That doesn't mean I spend 10 or 15 cents a gallon more to put into premium, because the minimum level runs my car, it runs my vehicle. So I think it's very important that we understand that minimum is not necessarily a negative word. It meets the standard. So we here in Del Norte County, I don't think we need to exceed the standard when the standard is already at meeting the standard and is satisfying the need. And I use the example of putting gasoline in your car. Do I need to put premium, the highest grade 100 octane gas in my car? No, I can put the 80 and that works, and it doesn't ping the engine, and everything works fine. The other instance is about the staffing levels and our mission statement. We have an R3 report which is still going in the process of vetting that says our staffing levels, and this is our outside consultant telling us, can be even streamlined further. Now, I understand you have a different interpretation of that, Ted.
Well, it was within the context of very specific duties of the authority being shifted to the other agencies.
Let me finish my thought, then I'll give you back the floor. But we are in the process of doing exactly that. If you have an opinion which is different than R3's, I understand that, and you're free to let us know your opinion. But at the same time, We have an R3 report, which we paid a lot of money for these experts to tell us how to run our authority efficiently and properly and to meet certain standards. Now, I would not want to disparage or marginalize or discount that report based on your opinion necessarily, because we paid this money to the experts. So that's all subject to interpretation. Now I'll give you back the floor.
I was merely pointing out that it's been said now several times from the dais that the R3 report saying that our staffing levels are too high. But that statement was within the context of several of the responsibilities of the authority being shifted to other member agencies such as the county. And until that happens, or educational responsibilities being shifted to Recology, until that happens, the statement that the R3 report says that our staffing levels are too high is not actually correct.
The statement that I'm reading here, Ted, and I'll just read it word for word again from their executive summary. It says, based on our review, it is clear that it is not necessary to staff both the executive director and program manager positions to effectively administer the current responsibilities of the authority. So I'm just reading it word for word.
I understand.
Out of this
In the
report,
larger
so-
report, though, they made very clear that some of those responsibilities would be shifted.
Okay,
So
rather than
that's what
talk
we're
about,
referring
we've already
to.
agendized the R3 report. I understand that, we've passed that, and we can discuss that at a later time, and I appreciate your bringing that up at this time, Commissioner Wilson, but this is what this R3 report is all about. It's your opinion, it's my opinion. These are the experts, and they've given us this document, and it's our job to interpret it. Now, having said that, I'm going to let other commissioners discuss.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
So you said that the water testing is going to increase dramatically. So I was just taking a look at I know there's semi-annual reports for groundwater, surface water. And then I also see the stormwater from the transfer station and the landfill is due annually. So how is that increasing? What is the level that that's increasing to?
Well, I would have to do a little bit more research in that regard. We've received a notice that I've included in prior agendas indicating that these requirements will increase. Some of the requirements, for instance, currently, are that after there's been a dry spell for about a week, you're supposed to try to collect water samples within the first hour that you have flow in a stormwater system, which essentially requires that after a dry week, if you have rain, you've got to go out there and collect the sample immediately. The other requirements that they have that they are talking about getting much more strict on are the inspection requirements, which essentially are similar, that when there's a rainstorm, you've got to go out there and do the inspection. At the landfill, I really feel like we can step back from those requirements without putting any environmental controls at risk, but we need to engage with the Regional Water Quality Control Board staff in order to have them agree that those monitoring requirements are no longer necessary. But that, like I said, requires staff time and capacity.
It seems like there should be some type of a container that would collect the rainwater and then kind of cap it off once it's filled the vial so that more water doesn't continue to go into it, so it would get the first rain. It seems as if there's because I know I have sensors at the aquarium for you know, if the water goes on the floor, there's a broken pipe, it will automatically turn off my motor so I don't have a 30 horsepower motor emptying out all the water. So they're real cheap, and I know that there's sensors that they have that, you know, make contact when it gets wet, and it sets a timer. So it seems as if there might be something to make it easier if it's that stringent and has to be collected within an hour of the first rainfall. That seems so unreasonable.
It seems we have technology. Are you telling me, Ted, that this has to be a human event, that you have to physically do this?
Yeah, physically
And what if
go out.
the last rainfall is 2 in the morning?
Exactly. We'll end up explaining that the first hour of rainfall occurred when we weren't open, but you still then have to provide such documentation, and that's part of the stormwater permit requirements. And like I said, I believe it would be to the advantage of this agency to have time and capacity for staff to argue that such stormwater monitoring is no longer necessary at the landfill.
Okay, based on what you're saying, that's, I hear you, and it's very reasonable. It just seems like this is a rather unrealistic way to monitor if, when the rain stops and someone's got a clock on it and it's 3 in the morning and you're out there in your galoshes and doing rain, or somebody
Well,
is.
this is part of the statewide industrial stormwater permitting process, and so it's a state law that's implemented through the regional water quality control boards.
So it's, in your opinion, we are probably not, it won't be required indefinitely to do this stormwater collection at the landfill?
That's exactly not what I'm saying.
Oh, well,
I'm
that's why
saying
I'm
that
asking
the
for
monitoring
clarification.
requirements are going up starting in July 2015.
Can you repeat what you just said then?
The
so I get it
monitoring
right?
requirements for stormwater monitoring are going to be increasing. There's going to be more work involved, more reporting, more monitoring
okay,
starting
hold on,
July
hold on.
2015.
Time out. I hear it, I feel it. Would you please put this on the agenda for December?
Sure.
Okay, and then with that, let's have an honest, robust discussion on this and how we can do this, rather than debate it at this point, which I don't think is going to get us anywhere. But if we put it on there and agendize it for discussion and possible action, then we can give you direction. Would that be all right with the board, or do you wish to?
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to repeat back to you so I have it clear. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm trying to understand what you're saying. That's why I'm repeating it back right now in public for you to correct me or not. So
Thank you.
I don't feel
And
like I'm arguing.
I
feel
also
like
share a desire that we all have a mutual
So I want to be on
understanding.
the same page, so that's it, but it'd be fine to put it on for public comment, because again, it's excuse me, not public comment, but for, on the agenda. But it's not necessary, I'm sure I can figure it out on my own.
Okay, let's move on. Now, Ted, is that your acting director's report complete?
Yes.
Okay, let's move on to 7.2, Treasurer Controller's Report for August 2014. And for the record, sir, please identify yourself.
My name's Rich Taylor.
Thank you,
I'm
Mr.
the,
Taylor.
Treasurer Controller. We've got the balance sheet from the county prepares, September 30th, 2014, shows cash of $690,685.65, impressed cash, which is cash on hand, $3,500, and we still have the iBank loan deposit of $198,177. Which is close to $900,000. There's one little thing, there's a $150,000 loan payment that we pay to the county, we transfer to them, and they transfer $100,000 to the iBank in August. Then in February, we transfer $50,000 to the county, and they transfer $100,000 to the iBank. That's not reflected in this September
Okay,
statement.
that's exactly my question.
The
That
$150,000?
$900,000 does not reflect the iBank loan and the other two items you just
The
mentioned.
one payment of $150,000,
So what is the net figure? based on that?
650.
Okay. Everybody good on that? So we have that accurate?
750.
750.
750. That's what we have in cash after this payment's made. And
Okay, go ahead.
in a way, we've prepaid on this iBank loan in that we paid 150, and in February, we will pay 50. The county pays 100 in August and 100 in February.
Okay.
But anyhow, your cash is growing, so even with that.
I know there was some concern that this authority was operating in the red for a period of time. With all of these reports that we were commissioning and what have you, how are we doing now?
They're all saying we're doing well. They come out of the,
So we've come
they
out of
come out of
this
the
abyss.
county, and they're not on an accrual basis, so it's a cash basis. That's why our cash is growing. If there's some payables that aren't made or entered, then that would change the answer a little bit, but I think we're getting that down. I think you're doing fine.
Thank you, sir.
According to this, you're doing real fine. So,
Well, I'll settle for the,
Okay.
I'll settle for the minimum threshold of fine. And above that is gravy. So thank you very much, Mr. Taylor. So that will bring us to 7.3, claims approved by Treasurer and Director for September 2014. Have we,
It's pretty standard, nothing really unusual. You'll notice we made the CalPERS payment.
okay. 7.4, monthly cash and charge reports for, that's the aging sheet, September 2014.
also fairly standard. It's important to know that our revenue for October this year was down about nearly $7,000 compared to last October, but our overall revenue is ahead of projection.
On the aging sheet, how are the parks doing? I didn't see that one in there, I missed it. Okay, I must have missed it. Are we getting up to date with the parks?
We are getting up to date. We're not quite there yet. And in
I
fact,
just-
what we're trying to chase down are the really old bits of documentation where we're pretty sure they never paid us, and they are wanting us to produce the documentation to prove that the money was owed.
Okay, so we've got control over that. I know it's bureaucratic.
Again, I really want to appreciate Lisa Babcock and Keith Estes, who have done a lot of work
Okay.
to try to bring these accounts up to date.
So noted. Then we move on to your earned revenue comparisons for fiscal year 13-14, fiscal year 14-15.
Yep. So, like I said, October revenue at the transfer stations is is ahead of projections, but behind of where it was last October, whereas our franchise fee payments are a little bit ahead of where we were last year.
Okay, so that will bring us up to adjournment. We'll adjourn to the next meeting, the Solid Waste Authority, scheduled for 3:30 p.m. And just for the public's edification, 3:30 is scheduled for closed session. 4 o'clock is when the general meeting starts, and that will be right here, and it will be on December 10th, and we are adjourned.